Welcome. Welcome to this week's BTO talk on generative AI. My name is Michael Alf, calling from a little bit sunny Lisbon today, working with companies on executive education advisory around AI transformation, GenAI transformation. And I'm here with my two partners. Rob, over to you.
Yes, Rob from a very sunny London today. Rob Thurner, one of the partners here, and working with Cambridge Judge Business School on their digital transformation programs and with clients in the Middle East in particular. Looking forward to our session today. Markus.
Yeah, I'm glad you are so excited about a sunny London. Enjoy it as long as you can. Markus Keiper calling in from Singapore. We have a lot of sun. Just come here. Adjunct Associate Professor for B2B Marketing at the National University of Singapore. And together with Rob and Michael, we founded this lovely company because we believe that Gen AI will go a long way for you if you are listening too. But the question always is, how can you get started or how can you get deeper into it? And the word deep is super important for this session today. Michael, take us away.
Well, something crashed the news and the stock exchange this week, and it's called DeepSeek. You might have heard about it. You might have heard about the minus 17% of Nvidia in one day. Yeah, so the poor CEO is now a couple of $billion less rich. I think we should not worry too much about him. But what happened? DeepSeek came onto the platform a new model, which in itself isn't kind of dramatic. Yeah, we have seen a number of models and they're all competing with each other. So Anthropic, Claude, OpenAI, Mistral as the big ones, Gemini, of course. Yeah, and now a new player is in there. But this one is coming from a different part of the world, yeah, from China. So that's interesting. So now we have the US, we have one in Europe, and we have now China with a model. Even that is not most interesting part. What is really interesting is what was kind of talked about, the cost of training and the cost of setting it up, which was a fraction of the OpenAI cost. Yeah, so we talk about factor 100 roughly. Yeah, so that's incredible. So therefore, the model, the use of the model is super cheap. Yeah, so this is suddenly a new player with similar achievements, so similar quality like the others, at a fraction of the price. That is really kind of part of what happened. The other part, and that's really interesting, you might know that Llama is one of the open source models from the US, yeah, and now DeepSeek is also an open source model. So you can actually download it. I actually did already download it to my machine and I started playing around it. Yeah, so it works. It's very simple, very straightforward if you know what to do. And this shifted everything. So you have now a model and just one sentence what they did, and then I pass over to you, Markus, to start kind of what it actually means. So what happened is when you think about the OpenAI model, it accesses all the data at once. Yeah, so therefore it's a huge data pool. And one of the things the developers of DeepSeek did, they split the data. So that means, for example, you have an expert on the oil industry, you have an expert consultant, you have an expert on something else, geography, and things like that, or a country. And then the model basically picks only that part. So therefore, there's far less data, therefore less processing. That's one of the elements. It just shows the ingenuity of software and algorithm development. So I think that's kind of at the core of it. So again, a fraction of the cost, also to run it, open source, and an interesting approach. With that, over to you, Markus.
Yeah, and I just want to mirror what Michael just mentioned as quite phenomenal. So you talked about a simpler model and being fractioned. It means that it is twice as fast as ChatGPT 4.0 or 4, and it's 90% cheaper because you need less resources and less data and so on, which means the fact that Michael says he can have it on his computer means for you as a company, you can have it on your computer and you can run and answer and ask all of these questions. Why did it actually happen? Because it was basically a necessity for China to come up with models without the high-end GPU units, because they couldn't get them from the US. So there's a little bit of geopolitics involved here. And the impact now is that through this model coming out of China in this case, the whole economy around GPUs and the Western built models, very, very complex models, is getting questioned. Now, maybe this is a little bit too much to say the dawn of them has already started, because I believe there's a space for everyone. But if you prefer a model from the east of this world, from China, for example, it's absolutely working. It's a great model. What you don't get answered are certain political questions or sensitive questions. You have to be very careful, because this model, after all, still originates in China, and it will not be critical about certain things. I will not give any examples, but you can test it yourself, as I did today as well. And in terms of whether it is a completely open source model, it is actually a hybrid open source model, because some of the parts are protected and some parts are very, very open. So it is a different nature. And Michael, I'm just looking forward how that will work out. But Rob, what does this actually mean for our audience? What advice are we giving? Stop ChatGPT and go to DeepSeek, or is it play with both, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, thanks, Markus. And it's a really interesting question. Is this a one LLM per user, or should we be expecting multiple users or multiple LLMs? It's interesting. Our guidance has been so far, just start with your preferred LLM, get good at that, rather than feeling like you've got to be downloading 3 or 4 of them. So whether it's OpenAI, which of course has got most of the headlines, or you're looking at Anthropic, or you're a Gemini, Google aligned business, and in which case Gemini is your preference. I would say it's important to be clear what are the differences and think about the decision making of your users. So as an individual or as an organization, what's most important to you? Is it cost? And that 90% figure, a lot of people I've spoken to in the last couple of days as consumers have said, hey, 90%, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to be using it. So that becomes the number one priority. Or maybe it's about capability. How capable is the LLM, and how quick is the response? Now, practically, the response time between ChatGPT, if we're saying 90% quicker, that's worth, was it 90%, Markus? We'll come back to that.
Two times, 90% cost.
2 times. Yeah, 2 times five, double numbers.
So that's a significant amount of time. It may be that your interest is actually around security. How secure is the data that you're using? We know there's a lot of preference in some markets for super secure rather than a focus on cost. And we need to think about the cultural question finally, and geographically. We know in the Middle East, for example, we have an Arabic version of an Arabic LLM, which is trained on Arabic content and therefore much more relevant in terms of the responses you're going to be getting. So I don't think it's a question of one or the other. I think it's still too early to tell. You know, we're only less than a week in, and there may well be some things that come out in this early phase that indicate definitely good at doing X and Y and Z, but for other reasons, it may be less competent, and therefore it's too early to call one way or the other. Do we think it's a one or another? Michael, put yourself in the shoes, you're the CTO, you're making the decision on behalf of your organization. How would you be calling it? You're not the end user, but you're making the group decision. What are the factors for you?
Yeah, thanks, Rob, first of all, for sharing your thoughts. And I think you made a very good point at the beginning, where you said we recommend, and that still holds, getting good at one. Yeah, actually getting good at using it. Yeah, it's not kind of getting good at one model. It's more like using a model. Yeah, and therefore all the models. Yeah. So which brings me to your question around the CTO. A key distinction is the individual level and the company level. On the individual level, it doesn't really matter. So it just doesn't matter. Even the 90%. I mean, think about it. 90% of 0, how much is that? So So then I ask you, who's paying anything for ChatGPT? The minority of people actually do pay the $20. So you save 90% of zero, which is exactly zero, yeah. And you need to get used to a new front end user interface when you use that. So what are you winning? Nothing. It has exactly the same results, yeah, in terms of the quality of the outputs. Yeah, so the benchmarks are pretty much on par with everything else. So it's just kind of it's a no discussion from my point of view on the individual level. Yeah, it's just like a lot of noise out there. Yeah, and either you lose a lot of money or you win a lot of money on the stocks exchange. That's almost more important. It's just like it's not. Yeah, every single model. So Claude, OpenAI, DeepSeek, Gemini, just to name the four big ones. The big ones you can use actually easily online. Doesn't matter which one you're using. In overall, you get very similar results for most of the things. So that's on the individual level. On the company level, situation looks completely different, of course. Yeah. So this is now about optimizing processes, really avoiding hallucinations, thinking about security, ethics, on all these questions, and they all come in. And this requires some more thinking and some more consideration. Where I'm seeing kind of where it's heading to is two things. One is every company will have multiple LLMs/SLMs. So you have now small language models and other variations of it. So let's say language models, even visual language models, VLMs are a thing. So you will have multiple. So there will be like an LLM portfolio manager, for example, in a company as one key function. So to actually see, okay, what are we using? Where are we using what? What kind of benchmarks are there? Is there indeed one better than the other, and so on? So all these questions come in there. So that's one part. The other part, and I think that's almost more important, and you see the stock exchange, again, using that is picking up again, not to the same amount and not yet with Nvidia and TCS and others, so the semiconductor companies. But some of the others actually won back most of the losses again. And for example, a company like Apple actually was winning all the time significantly against. So it's a very interesting portfolio, what's happening there, which I think that's overhyped, the impact. So the initial understanding is, okay, everything is cheaper, so you need less GPUs and you need less energy. So therefore, energy companies dropped significantly, which was almost ridiculous, separate conversation. So now what is happening, and that's interesting, it becomes a lot easier and cheaper to run LLMs. And this won't be the last LLM model in this way, which is cheap. So therefore, it's now even easier to use LLMs for everything. So therefore, the use actually will go up, not down. So therefore, the demand on all of them will go up as well. So overall, from a CTO perspective, I say, okay, well, we need to train our people clearly so that they know what they're doing and they get better at it. And Maverick is perfect for that. So that's one.
Agree.
Second is I need to look at kind of what models I'm going to have. And because they are also world-class now in terms of the outputs, and they will become even better, so beyond PhD level, I need to see how I manage the different models. Then cost plays a small part of it, but I need to kind of balance that off. And sometimes I use in tasks free models to get 3 different results and compare the results with a fourth model, which evaluates the results of 3. This is kind of how I would approach it from a CTO perspective.
Very interesting, Michael. I fully agree with, in particular, with your point of that the demand will increase and not decrease, and the number of people in any organization who will use it will also increase. So we want to wrap it up. What is the takeaway for you? Number one, you have a new option in the market which comes from China. If you prefer that and prefer the model, it is available for you. It's online, it's in the App Store, and it's for free at the moment. Don't forget, there are also other solutions coming from Europe, for example, like Mistral and Aleph. So we are not excluding any solutions here. Secondly, we talked about that, guys, a while ago. Should we have a strategy for GenAI or not? And I would like to put one, maybe we can discuss that next week. you should actually have a strategy, but not necessarily about which LLM you are using, but your strategy is about data and how you structure your data and how you organize your data. So if you're a small or medium-sized company, is your data ready to be used for anything? Then you can start thinking about GenAI. All right. With this, we are there to help you. We enjoy searching the market for you every week. Rob, anything else we want to leave everyone behind?
Yeah, well, you talked earlier, Markus, about needing to make sure the whole organization understands what you can do with the large language models. There's more demand, and therefore there's more need for knowledge and understanding. And we're very, very pleased to offer you the Simulation Maverick. If that's of interest, do get in contact. We're now out there that's picking up traction, and we'd be very happy to share how that works with you when you're ready. So with that, thanks very much for joining us today. Thanks for your time. We will see you next week.
Bye for now.
Well then.